welcome to the second part of this discussion. So we will be discussing some important aspects of what the speakers addressed in the first few talks. So let me go ahead with the first question. I think it can be, of course, answered by all the panelists. So of course we are in an unprecedented economic and humanitarian crisis, and we always discuss it, we experience it on a daily basis as well. So the problem with this is something like research has not been given priority. The reason is because there's many other priorities in the world, in the country rather, because we have lack of medicine, we have a lack of food, and fuel was a problem till recently, and probably will be a problem soon again. So all these problems are there. So how can we give priority to research, and how important is it for us to give priority to research? As you know, the former Indian Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, was famous for promoting science and technology and research. And we have all heard about Singapore, how they promote research and development and how it contributed to their development. I would like to know, as a nation, how do we make sure universities that would help get out of this crisis? We would like to know from the panelists, starting from maybe Professor Ranil Fernando.
Yeah, thank you. You see, particularly in terms of medicine, like you say, perhaps now may not be the time to do high-end, high-class research, but certainly the universities can help because, for example, to maintain the health and what the priorities are so on to prioritize resources, you need data, you need studies, you need a lot of information. So I think the first priority, particularly in the field of medicine, is to collect data. If I give you an example, now it is predicted that maybe 5 years down the road, majority of the children will be malnourished. So that is one area. So I really don't think in any situation that you can leave research out. So we need to change our roles, change our mindset, and then go ahead and do the research that is required for the country at that given time. So that would be my offer for that.
Thank you very much, Professor Anil. I think that's indeed a very interesting thought. We can't leave research out. We have to think ahead, but then timely research also is important. So now I would like to hand it over to Mrs. Visakha Nanakar.
I think that's exactly what Professor Ranil said. We keep on saying, right, necessity is the mother of innovations. So if you look at, if you try to address the socio-economic impact, I think research always gets priority. So you need to focus on what need to be done. I'm not saying, hey, you do applied research, forget about fundamental research. Fundamental research is important, but you need to, if you think about it from a socio-economic point of view, research would always be needed. And recent past is the best example for that.
So just to add to Ms. Vishaka and Professor Ranil, so when you look at the countries who had similar situations like us, Israel in 1945, and then Greece, Bangladesh very recently, they have not deprioritized funding for research. They, in fact, they looked at short-term, medium-term, and long-term strategies. So I think the research, like there are some timely research that we need to do in the short term, at the same time in the medium term and the long term as well, in order to avoid any, like the current brain drain, we have to invest on research. On some of the research will come into life or make that impact in probably another year's time. But that research has to start right now. And also educating entrepreneurs, especially in SMEs. That's also very important at this stage. Again, it can be medium term. It won't come straight next month or in another 2-3 months. So therefore, we need to identify what are the areas that we need to invest in short-term research, medium-term research, and long-term research. And whatever the research we do, there has to be some outcome-oriented. I think, and also we have to monitor that outcome as well. I think that's what I want to add.
Right, okay. As I can remember, somebody mentioned about this Universities Act, and it says very clearly the duties of the university teachers. So the teaching, research, and engagement in social activities. Of course, research is part and parcel of the university teachers' kind of the duties. So therefore, I don't think how hard the times can be, or even kind of if we run through very, very difficult times, we can't deviate from research. I think it's part of our life. So it's we happen to make it part of our kind of the way of life, so that irrespective of the times in the country or the context that we are going through, it has to be part of our kind of the day-to-day work. We have to live with it, and that is how it is. And to add that, now this question, along with that you have mentioned about the food crisis and the medicine and all that you have mentioned about. In fact, there are so many things that we can, if I refer back to my presentation here, maybe it was a bit confusing, but but the inductive inquiry, of course, what kind of question that we should ask. Now this particular example, even Visakha also mentioned about it, food crisis. Do we really have food shortage in this country? I mean, everybody is doing research how to come out of it and how to distribute and all that. But the real question that we have to ask, is there a real food crisis? Is there a real food shortage? Okay, as old as, it was in 2011, as I can remember. Priyanka is there in this audience. She's not there, right? She's there, right? Okay, you can remember. 2011, I believe. Okay, it was their batch. It's the 4th or 5th batch of the town and country planning students who did their kind of final year, one of the projects. In that they found what we have is not the food scarcity, but we have information scarcity. That means food is there, people in need is there, but there's a gap in between. The food information flow is not there. So isn't that the type of research that we should be doing, and to bring out this result coming to that? That is something that we have found, right? I mean, maybe it was not communicated, and also as very correctly Visakha said, maybe some people don't like to kind of bring that kind of information out, and therefore it is like. So that's why I say our research is needed more during the times of crisis than the kind of times of when we're happy. Of course, when we're happy, we can go for kind of big funding and the imagination and all that. But when we are in crisis, of course, our research is more important than the other times. That's what I got to say.
Thanks. Interesting question. Let's look at it from the basic principles, the first principles. What is a crisis? Crisis is we are seeking solutions, and there are no much of it. And crisis is there to navigate, for us to navigate, to manage. The most basic requirement of any management strategy is data. And that simply justifies our requirement to have research. That is the first point I want to highlight. Secondly, after a crisis, of course, we are seeing a downfall. And we are looking at some type of a growth. To have a growth, we need to have capital, more importantly, human capital. And research is one of the ways that we make human capital. And we have, in a way, we ask this question, is research necessary in a crisis? Has it to be prioritized? We ask this question simply because we classify research as it is a process that always generates a physical, deliverable sort of a physical outcome. No. There's always a human capital element in it. That is the essence. A person is training themselves, getting the skill of applying the scientific method. That is exactly what research is. That is the primary focus. Two things. We need data to have a robust management strategy, number one. Secondly, it's all about human capital. To again, we need that in a crisis situation.
So the answer is already given at different places, but I'll sum it up. When your backs are to the wall, there's nothing else you can do. You have to innovate. That's how you get out of that situation. If somebody corner you to that corner of this space, there's no other way. You have to innovatively think to get out of it. So obviously research is definitely important. As some of you said, what question to ask is also important. I have two things which I want to add about the university research. One is, do we know all the research which has happened in Sri Lanka, in all the universities? How many things are repeated? Is there a repository for all the research? So the data, collection of data, and whether that is being repeated. This is something which is really important. The other thing is, in US, in the 1980s, Bayh-Dole Act changed that country to use their knowledge for their country's development. So we need something like that. If public money has gone into any research, that has to be come into socioeconomic development.
Thank you very much. It was indeed quite interesting to listen to the different perspectives from the panelists. We move on to the second question. There is a view that academia generally works in silos, that we publish and then simply it tends to be disseminated among academics. But there's no communication of this to outside academia, to the industry or to the wider public, etc. So what are the main ways that we can disseminate research findings in a meaningful manner to the public? And how can we make sure that our research gets applied, whether it is for whatever applications they have, how do we make sure that they are applied? I guess there's a phrase that called, a phrase like bench to bedside in medicine. So how do we make sure this process becomes more quicker and our research is indeed applied rather than just sitting in at the end of the day a journal where only academics tend to read. So how can we make this happen? I would like to start from the other side this time.
All right. So I think one of the new media is used by Ruchira, as he explained earlier.
Yes.
That's one of the ways. But I think something we don't look at is the intrinsic knowledge, the tacit knowledge. I'll give you an example. We talk about coconut a lot. Coconut coir pith is used to make these grow bags and new grow media. I know one of my friends who is importing, he's in Canada, he's importing these grow bags from here for strawberries and cannabis. And they are in a very high, even though we don't really think about it, there are certain technical issues which we need to really be concerned about, that the electrical conductivity, the water absorption capacity and all of that. So when you are shipping it from here, the water level has to be low, otherwise you are shipping water basically, right? So you have to dry it. If you go to Coconut Triangle, and if you look at most of these industries are drying these things in sunlight. Yeah, and as you can imagine, we are a country with a lot of rain, and they suffer from that too. So the first, if I ask any engineer here, first thing which will come to your mind is a dryer. Why aren't we using a dryer? So the tacit knowledge is important in that case. If you heat it up beyond a certain temperature, the whole porous structure collapses. And the amount of water which can absorb goes down drastically. And it doesn't work. And that will get rejected. So even to solve a small problem like that, you need to talk to all the stakeholders, not just the theoretical knowledge. And so this is where I think, even at the beginning of research, sometimes depending on what you are looking for. I know Professor will give a very complicated answer than me, but for certain type of problems, you need to go and talk to all the stakeholders before even start.
Thanks. I'm afraid I have a different point of view on this. You see, I tend to believe that general public at least should not, I mean, they are so much distracted. I don't think they will have enough time to really, given the socioeconomic conditions and even with the usual distractions, they don't have enough time to really know and digest all the latest research. I don't think that is a possibility. However, I think it's much more important for us to educate them on fundamentals. Maybe not how a particular composite work, how the interesting chemistry that we have really innovated to make it all stabilized and super strong. Nobody's really interested, only the researchers and maybe grantors and all that. Instead, let's use latest research to catalyze curiosity and a way of delivery. So we wrap the whole fundamentals in that package and we deliver. So we call for that curiosity and we deliver fundamentals and the first principle things. And that is my take on this. Thank you.
Right, not a complicated one, but of course let me kind of sort it out. I mean, not too complicated, right? Okay, fine. But anyway, that one of the things that how we can make a bigger socio-economic impact, of course, as you said, to take it to society. I believe, of course, there are, people, those who are very good at it, of course, through the different media that they take it. One of the reasons, now I reveal one by one of the reasons why I have it in Sinhala is, of course, is a way. We university researchers, most of the time, I believe majority of the university researchers in Sri Lanka, of course, we do research, we publish research, we talk in different forums in this language. Maybe we all can understand, right? I don't think that majority of the society understands it unless we talk to them in their own language, right? Sinhala and Tamil in Sri Lanka. Maybe in other countries there can be other languages, but only what percentage of Sri Lankans understand English? Of course, they know English, but they are conversant in English, but how many of them understand research in English, right? That's the problem. But I'm sure that Ruchira's set of videos, I have entertained some of them, not most of them, how to become a good joke or something like that, something like that, something like that. Okay, that's, anyway, those things are very interesting because we know that they can communicate very well to the kind of wider audience. That is, must be the way that we can take it to the society, right? If we take it like that, then of course the decision makers, we know very well most of the decisions, as you mentioned, of course, is taken by the kind of people at the higher level. So that I don't have to tell who, but I also have worked with them, but we know how it operates. But maybe sometimes popular solutions or the popular policies that they make, of course, can be influenced by this wider kind of society, that those who got influenced by this kind of awareness. So that's very important. We have to take it to the society in a language that they understand, in a way that they kind of comprehend it, so that we can make a big impact in that way.
So just to, the question was mainly, how do you bring the university research, not to just to finish at a journal level, but to add to the more socio-economic impact and to the wider audience. So I think the public side being covered, I just want to touch on the industry, right? So we do a lot of industry-university collaborations, and within University of Moratuwa, I was also involved in a lot of research that we try to bring in to industry and apply that research in the industry level. So I think that we need to amplify that to another level, especially during this sort of situation where we have economic crisis in Sri Lanka, how we need to identify these areas that need more attention and do research in these areas. Like Dr. Mudita mentioned, that we need to understand the stakeholders, the final stakeholders, before even start the research, talk to the industry and identify what areas need to be researched on and invest human capital as well as the available funds on those research and take that research into direct to the industry and help contribute to the socio-economic.
People who publish journals also need to survive, right? So you can't take it out. My simple answer to your one was have a category in the promotion criteria where you look at impact, not anything else, then it would be happening. But what is important is not the output, the outcome. How would you do that? And sometimes we tend to emphasize on the technology we use rather than on the actual outcome of the what we do. I mean, Fuel Pass is my example again. Nobody understands QR code, how it works, right? But it gave us a solution that works. I'm pretty sure in the barter system, we could have used multiple colored pebbles and implemented the same fuel quota. This week you use yellow, next week you use green, like that. But we keep on, if we kept on harping on QR code and tried to educate people on the QR code, impact would have been different. What we wanted was to use a technology. That's why I said we are the forerunners in this game. We know what the technology can do, but we need to use that technology to have an impact outcome rather than the output, which would be the number of journal publications.
Thank you, madam.
I have always been an opening batsman. So, yeah, it's like Murali having to score 5 runs with 2 balls. Anyway, no, I mean, jokes apart, in medicine, the situation is slightly different because whatever action we take will have an impact on somebody's health. So whatever research we do, we cannot actually apply it to a human being unless it is thoroughly tested, approved, and ethically cleared, and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, those of us who sort of use knowledge and treat people, they find out, the public know. They know which person to go for which treatment. But unfortunately, the ethical code does not permit us to give it a lot of publicity apart from writing it up on journals and doing things like that. One of the ways which we can probably contribute is by writing some journal articles or contributing to some journal or something like that. But other than that, the situation in medicine is slightly different.
Thank you, sir. So we come to the third question. I think all of the opinions were quite interesting. Should we finish our questions and go? Or?
Yeah.
I think we can do that, yes. Maybe one more question, then afterwards we will get the audience's questions. So the gap in academic findings and policy making, I think this is something which has got apparently, very clear in the recent times. What should be done in economic terms, specifically myself being from the finance and economic area, what should have been done in terms of policy and what was actually done. So the research said something completely different, whereas the policymakers did something entirely different in terms of the decisions. So how can we bridge this gap? How can the policy making be bridged? So that is my next question. And what are the experiences of other countries? I think some more light, I think Dr. Mudita mentioned earlier about the whole cannabis story, which there's a lot of talk in the parliament as well. So, is that based on any findings, any science, anything like that? I really don't know because I'm not from that field, but we can share, if somebody can shed light on that, that'll be also great. So, this time I think I'll let Professor Ranil be the opening batsman since he's used to it.
No, I didn't say that to get the mic again. I can give actually a very good example. Now, during the height of COVID, 2 or 3 people died at the beginning. I'm talking about the beginning. And it was headline news. But little did people realize that on our roads, every day 6 to 8 people die. Now this is something I could not understand. This is where, simple things. If the road signs were a little bit better, if the drivers had more knowledge and warning, we could have overcome this. So this is, I think, as professionals, we need to work on this. In fact, the College of Surgeons and quite a few organizations tried to make a difference and, approach politicians. But at the political level, due to multiple reasons, this did not materialize. But I don't think we need to give up. I think we need to identify a few areas like that which we can make a difference. Certainly, the surgeon should be able to make a difference in terms of road accidents. So we must keep going, and then hopefully, because unfortunately, the 225 had to pass the law, otherwise we cannot use that in the country. So, but I think we need to persevere and pick up a few areas where we can really make a difference and get the policies changed. I think we need to do that.
We really need to show that impact. Gone are the days that these policies were made on anecdotal evidences, right? But we need to have data. We need to have that impact. Many a times a question asked among the younger colleagues is, here we have experts, why aren't we being consulted? I mean, we need to show that we have made an impact. That is why it is important. Our research has socioeconomic impact. We should be seen as the leaders. And we need to, I mean, journal publications are one thing, but I don't think any of the 225 reads those journals, right? They see if you do something which would have an impact in the society, they would see that. So make sure that we do that and make sure that we get counted. So that is where once again, the outcomes are important.
Yeah, so before talk about our politicians in the politics, any great leader would need to for him or her to make a decision, need data, right? If there is no, in a data poor environment, you are not able to make a decision that can make impact. So I just want to add Ms. Vishaka's point that the universities and research institutes and industry, all the experts needs to provide that data for policymakers to make that impactful policies. And then not only provide the data, we need to make sure that data is being used to make those decisions as well. Because some of the decisions they just make for their personal benefits. We need to ask questions, have you used the data that we provided to make this particular decision? I think that's where we all need to stand up at this sort of a crisis situation.
Right, I think the question had about two components. Okay, the first part is answered, so that I'll come back to that later. But let's try to kind of make the kind of answer to the second part of it, how it happens in the other countries that you have asked. Okay, whether there are examples. Of course, whether there are examples, of course, I'm sure that most of you know. But I'll tell you one of my experience. Of course, again, I share with you my experience that I was fortunate to kind of have a visit to USA. I mean, to understand the planning and the urban development sector in USA and also in Australia as well. I have been working very closely with them as well, right? So in my first visit to USA, of course, I was expecting to see how things work in USA. Of course, the kind of most liberal and the most kind of advanced country in the world, right? Having been there and that visiting from one institution to another institution and meeting people and all that, I found, it's the same old thing that's happening here as well, right? I mean, what nonsense, right? People talk about. Then I asked this question from one of these experts, okay, I thought that the USA and everything is working very well. It's a kind of place to work, planning very well. Of course, the agencies plan, and they are implemented, and they're being implemented, and therefore you get the result. What nonsense, you're mistaken. This is not the place that you can see it. If you go to sometimes maybe Soviet Union, you might find it, right? But here, of course, it doesn't happen like that. So as the case with Australia, so Australia also has different tiers of government, federal government and the state government and the local governments, right? So local agencies, I'm talking about planning, right? Okay, the local agencies make plans, and the federal government also has their own plans. And the local governments happily, while implementing their plan, all of a sudden they find the expressway kind of authority come and say, hey, you can't do this, because federal government has a plan for that, right? So much of disintegration, right? We here think, oh, it works very well in Australia, right? So it doesn't work like that. It's the same as here, right? So don't worry too much about it. This is the world phenomenon, right? Okay. This is how it happens. This is the answer to the second part of the question, right? Okay. So we don't have to worry. This is how it happens. Therefore, we have to go with the reality, of course, right? To the first part, of course, we can do a lot of impact on the kind of politicians, provided that we have the chance to kind of hit the right point, right? Okay, so that one of the, not the politicians, as you said very correctly, it's not the politicians to be blamed. Of course, there are some policymakers, some experts themselves. They also make wrong, they are very adamant, and so they are not ready to kind of listen to data, kind of look at data and kind of listen to the experts and so on. Therefore, they make wrong decisions in that way, and maybe wrong in the sense, I mean, not very appropriate to the given context, right? So that it happens like that. So one of the examples, again, I'm quoting is, okay, one of the questions that we asked is different question. Now that everybody's talking about urbanization, that's why I said, okay, my subject area may not be very convenient for you, but I'm sure that it's very relevant. That's happening under your feet, right? So that we are becoming urban people. So the question that we asked, that deals with is how to define urban population in Sri Lanka. That has been a struggle for a long time. So if you look at statistics, you may find that Sri Lanka is one of the least urbanized country in the world, according to the statistics, right? So because it says that the local authorities categorized as urban areas and rural areas show that we are very least urban. But is that the reality, right? So that's Chatura is also this part of it. So that we did a kind of, we had an alternative question. Conventionally, we know that urbanization defined as people migrating from rural areas to urban areas, so that you find urbanization is happening in that way. That doesn't happen in Sri Lanka to that extent. We have very little people coming to the urban areas, but instead, the urbanity, urban facilities, urban way of life is reaching out, seeking for people, right? That's what's happening in this country, right? Even the World Bank also has kind of termed this as hidden urbanization. So that is what really makes difficult for us to kind of bring in any planning solution, because we base our solutions on that conventional understanding of urbanization, right? So that kind of finding we had here. Of course, we published and all that, but I don't think even this census department also is very happy with that, because they think if you do, as I said, they say, okay, we have to change all definitions. How can we do this? I mean, this is a kind of big problem for them, right? Right? So we have to change everything. We have to train people in that way. We have to make all our statistics different, right? So that is how it works, right? So we have to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the policy is not made by set of perfect individuals. The policy is in fact how state is practicing its power on the public. The idea, the big question is how researchers can influence the policy. So if you take it from the fundamental sort of a situation, the only way that the state policy, the way state exercises power is influence, we need another social force. So it's a battle between social forces. And have academics been identified as a social force? And that ultimately everything boils down to that. If academics, with their research and data, their opinions, ideologies has been identified as a social force, then they can influence the policy. There's no other way. That at least that's how I look at it. So in many ways, academics, at least now, we show our strength in numbers. That is not how we show our strength. There's completely different way of exercising our social power in the society. Not in numbers. We don't count much in a road. No. The way we exercise our social power is through dissemination of knowledge and how much we can influence public to take a certain stance. And if we can do that, that is the only way that we can influence policy. That is my stake.
again, same situation now. But I will, before I answer this question, I have something interesting about QR codes. In China, beggars are wearing QR codes of their bank accounts. So this is, just Google it, you will see even photos. About policy, I will take Professor Anil's example of the two examples he talked about, COVID and the road accidents. During the COVID days, Sri Lanka went and installed some machines at the airport, and the current Prime Minister said that we are not going to get COVID anymore. So this was done by scientists. Right, so they are the people who influence that policy or policy decision, which use some public money and no repercussions. Right, so that those things happen. This is like in our recent past. Road accidents, one of my friends was at the city traffic, I think he was heading that place. He was telling me that during New Year, April, New Year times, that's when the accidents are, most of the accidents happen. Because a lot of people travel to see their relatives, maybe drunk, all that. So a lot of people die in that time. He wanted to get some publicity to that, and I don't think he was able to. This was a few years back. So our media is the other culprit. And you have seen some of the graphs on major television networks, which I'm not going to mention the name. So how they have used the graphs to, so these are simple, like Ruchira says, fundamental things which are being wrongly broadcast to general public. How are we going to fight? We are a small community. That's big money. So that's something which you have to think about. The other thing is, when I was a graduate student, someone from National Science Foundation of US came and talked to a bunch of us graduate students at University of Arizona. She mentioned US has assigned certain set of research which are not very attractive research as critical research for US, and they have assigned a national lab for that, just for those research, and fund that. Because they know they are playing long game. They know when they need that information, and they are spending money way ahead of time. So that kind of policies are there in other countries. I agree with Professor. Most of the things are like this, but I think one thing I have realized by looking at some of the things happening now, we are US in the 1930s or 20s, 30s, that era. So we might have another century to go, but maybe we are trying to accelerate it. I think, as Professor mentioned, this is a very small country and we can make things change very quickly. I think we need to make sure even the people who are involved in policy from the universities are standing for the right things. For example, the fertilizer crisis. I mean, we all knew this is going to happen, and I mean, didn't have to do agriculture. I was making fun of my agriculture friends on Facebook also, because we were right next to each other. Our rooms were next to each other when we were at Peradini. So, unfortunately, a medical professional took charge and completely make everybody else redundant. And I think we should have got together and stood against him and pushed back. I think that part didn't happen, and the whole country is in this situation.
Thank you very much. I think we had some very interesting answers from everybody. Now I would like to hand it over to the audience. If anybody has any questions, you can hand over the phone actually. Any questions?
Thank you very much for the panel members for a fruitful discussion. My question is about multidisciplinary research. So when it's come to multidisciplinary research, different people come from different disciplines. And what I feel is that in every individual always try to stay within their comfort zone of their own discipline. So even in my example, so I'm good at built environment, but I want to collaborate with IT or even medicine. I don't even want to even. I have no clue about what are those disciplines are doing and all. So what is your advice in a multidisciplinary project? How we can come out of this comfort zone of our own discipline when we don't have knowledge about other discipline? How does this multidisciplinary project works? Do you have any advice? Would be appreciated.
Shall I take it?
Sorry. Are you targeting any specific panel member, or you want to put it?
Anyone, yeah, anyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe go ahead.
Yeah, I think I understand your problem. If you're just starting to solve a problem which needs multidisciplinary approach, but that is what I said. One thing I really love about Moratua research culture is these multidisciplinary research centers. Now, if I take what I'm familiar with, data search, we work with colleagues from multiple faculties, multiple departments. So when it actually comes to solving a problem, we already know each other. Our comfort zone encompasses everyone. My example is if you take the transport related research, which data search does quite a lot, but because we work with colleagues in TLM, we work colleagues with in various areas, we are one cohesive group anyway. So in that I think in that sense, these multidisciplinary research centers actually have a huge human factor to consider. You need to cooperate and collaborate before you actually start solving a problem. But your dilemma, where I now have a problem, I need to work with people from other levels, and how do I do it? I always keep on telling, and especially to our colleagues from the business faculty, sometimes both sides try to solve the same problem. They use statistics, we use machine learning. And we try to explain to each other how we would look at the problem. So if you try and articulate the problem from your point of view and also try and listen to a colleague articulating it from their point of view, it makes it easier to understand the problem and come to a middle grounds. Not scientifically proven, but this is something which has worked for us at Data Search. Anyone else?
So if everyone is working for the same goal, that's number one. Number two is respecting the other person's knowledge, right? You have to understand when you have a group of people, they also know something. So if all of them respect each other, I think this problem goes away. Right now we are in the fourth industrial revolution. There are no lonesome geniuses which is going to solve problems anymore. It has to be collaborative research.
Right, okay, just to respond to that, of course, I believe that multidisciplinary, of course, I mean, we are a university of multidisciplinary and we are a faculty of multidisciplinary, and I'm in the department of a multidisciplinary kind of research people planning. We have all sorts of kind of expertise coming from different subject knowledge. Right, one of the things that we can do, okay, I'm so sorry to say how many of us kind of encourage our students to kind of do research in new ways. Let's kind of question ourselves itself. I know the number of emails that I get, I mean, usually I clear all my emails in the morning. I have so many emails coming from a particular department, I would say. I'm sorry to say that, but not my department. Okay, now you are an expert in this particular field, please fill this up for me, right? Questionnaire service, right? Online questionnaire service. Sometimes 4 or 5 during the times of their dissertations. I get large number of questions. Okay, I'm an architect and plan as well. So that as an architect, as expert in the built environment sector, okay, what do you think about this? What about lean construction? What about this? What about this? What kind of nonsense? I mean, then some of them, of course, originally I kind of responded to them. But later on I said, okay, don't you have any more interesting things to do, right? This is a question that the kind of response that I gave it to you, right? Because what they do is, okay, even there, I believe that, okay, I'm sorry to say this again, I know there are so many of us in our team, right, our team, let's take the responsibility collectively, and we do not encourage students to do new things. We ask them to, okay, this is how what I know. Okay, set up, okay, get this particular kind of a topic, and your method will be questionnaire survey, and go for the questionnaire survey, ask these particular questions. You'll get a response rate maybe about maximum 5%, be comfortable with that, analyze it and show something, that's it, right? Isn't that what we are doing? Let's try to kind of question ourselves, right? I mean, don't you have to have that's what I said, that's inductive inquiries. I mean, is it the way that we should do it, right? There are so many different ways that we can do it. I mean, it is our fault that if nothing happens, as you said, partly we also are kind of responsible for that, right? Let's try to get out of that culture. If we want to do multidisciplinary culture, as you very correctly said, of course, not that we all are expert in everything, but we know that everybody is expert in something, right? And let's respect each other and kind of go to them and get that knowledge. If maybe we are too old enough to kind of learn that again from that, but at least get their expertise into that. That's what we can do. The hybridities, learning from each other and cross-breeding. That is what we should be doing. That's what I believe, at least. Even in my department, as I said, I'm boasting, but I'm very proud to say I have a set of people, especially the young ones, those who come from different disciplines, even though their core area is planning, core-value sign planning. They are experts in transportation, in IT, in GIS, in sociology, and environmental sciences and everything. I'm so very fortunate in that way. I'm trying to kind of get all of them into one bundle and kind of try to collaborate with other departments as well. So that's what we can, that's the way ahead, right? Thanks.
On a lighter vein, you need to do a little pre-research research and find a like-minded team of people.
Sorry.
Sorry,
Mike.
I'm sorry, so is it okay if I just go ahead? Yeah, because my question is related to the question that was asked previously and the answer Professor Jagat gave. So I'm Osanka from the Languages Department, and I'm very young here, so I don't think many people know me even. But this is a very interesting discussion, and I really enjoyed it. And I can relate to most of the things that were covered by every one of the panelists, and Professor Jagat talking about inductive inquiry, thinking critically, and then Ms. Vishaka's stories, how everyone carries stories with us, and then Dr. Ruchira's philosophy, Professor Fernando, I completely agree with most of the things he said, and also with Professor Jagat. And yeah, so everyone, and I was thinking, now we talk about, we have two paradigms of research basically, so mostly it's quantitative or qualitative. And we tend to, put these into boxes, and then we say, okay, we are a technical university, so we do this kind of research. But then, even Dr. Ruchira was pointing this out, that we need to put three things together. So science, mathematics or technology, and then philosophy. So most of these words that, the key words, if I were to pinpoint them, they are related to humanities and social sciences. So as an educationist and also a linguist, I've studied linguistics and I'm planning to study education. So I'm interested in these areas, and also my field is academic literacies, how to improve the language and literacy skills of undergraduates so that they can perform better in the academics, right? So my question is to do with, I was also wanting to ask, I wanted to ask about how we can improve multidisciplinary research truly, where we incorporate social sciences, where we incorporate thinking into it, because we deal with humans. Even an engineer, if we produce something, we produce for humans, for people to use. So we cannot actually exclude the fact that, we can't exclude the human factor.
Sorry,
so,
excuse me.
Yeah.
Cut you off there.
I'm sorry. So I just want to ask, how can we do this? And also, something I wanted to say was touched by Professor Jagat. That's about the research culture among the undergraduates. So that's where I want to get at. So we need to promote multidisciplinary research and an academic culture where we get the students to think about it. So how can we do this as a university? We have to have a discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very, very important question. I believe that, of course, that's what we also believe in. I don't know whether this, the technicalities, like for example, the number of hours, credits, and the reporting requirements, and the so many different things that we have to kind of adhere to, will not kind of provide the the things that we really want to get out of a university kind of a graduate, right? So we have dreams about a university graduate, okay? We think about a kind of person with lot of things, right? Okay, I mean, that may really not come out with this kind of technicality that is kind of restricting us a lot. But of course, as you said, of course, humanities, that is what's more important at the end, right? I mean, that's why we, sometimes our graduates, our undergraduates ask, why do you have to be, I mean, we came here to learn town planning, why do you have to learn drama? Right? They ask this question, right? Okay, then we have no answer. They say, okay, you learn it and see first, right? But it seems to be kind of, they learn a lot out of it, right? And they sometimes ask, okay, when we came here to do kind of university education, why do you have to do social work? You ask us to go and plant trees on the, why do you go and ask us to go and go do school work, right? Teach students in the school. Why do you have to do all that, right? We do it and see. I mean, you, you learn it once on fine day, but that is how we have to do it. I believe that, in fact, we have to, even the engineering, there's an art in it, right? Architecture, of course, already said, it's the mother of all arts, I would call it. And also there are even in sciences, there's an art in it, right? So that, so we have to understand the subtleties, as to go to the basics, as you said, I believe. That's the basic thing that we have to understand. So to do that, we need people from different disciplines, and not only from different disciplines, people, maybe an engineer and an artist, architect and a kind of engineer, maybe kind of a scientist. So that's what we need. We need a kind of office and a gentleman type of situation where people will, with lot of kind of different aspects in the same person. That's what we have to think about. Our lecturers have to be like that, first of all. I believe the lecturers have to remold themselves, right, in that way. Unless if we think, oh, I'm an engineer for an engineer, I'm an architect for an architect. It doesn't happen to be the way. I mean, as an architect, I should be an artist. I should be a kind of an actor. Of course, we can do that, right? We can be a joker, of course, as you said, right? Okay. We can be a politician as well, of course. All these things have to come at the same time, right? Then only we really can induce that kind of knowledge and the kind of culture into a student. Otherwise, how can we do that, right? If we try to behave like a one type of person, right?
Yes, sorry. You can use that's fine.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Very interesting actual discussion. I think there was one topic that was not really discussed, I believe. There was a question like, okay, whether we need to do research in a crisis situation. Obviously, I would say yes. Like, the question actually is, are we doing research for our own survival? Okay, number one. I mean, do our research actually inspire anyone? Because we are actually public funded, whether you actually get a grant or not, we are funded by public money. We get our salaries paid by public. So the question actually is, do our research really inspire the society for them to value what we are doing? Okay? I don't think we discuss that at all, because it's the outcome actually that really matters. Okay? If you look at our neighbor, India, okay? And how do Indians get inspired? They send rockets to whatever, right? I mean, it inspires millions of teenagers, kids, even probably toddlers might be actually looking at rockets. So the inspiration actually comes from looking at the outcome of what has been done. But what I actually do see in Sri Lanka actually is good, like something like that. So my question actually to the panel actually is really, do our research inspire society? And are we actually doing research for our own survival? That's because if we can actually answer that, I think we would be actually better, like, I mean, connecting all these practitioners and society, I think we would be able to find better answers if we can actually get an answer for that.
When the question gets difficult, the mic gets passed to me. That's all. No, I only said I was opening batsman, not opening speaker. Anyway, no. No. All of us, like Professor Munasinghe said, must touch our hearts and say yes. Some of us actually, most of us. Unfortunately, the promotion scheme in the university deals with papers, points, etc. Nothing about innovation, inspiration, flair, nothing like that. So most of us, whether we like it or not, are forced to do research to survive. But some of us, I must say, I mean, some of us, not necessarily in medicine, but in other fields, you can see some people have done research which has inspired a little bit. But I do agree with you that there is a great scope for the future to do research and perhaps inspire the next generation.
Not for you, but I just want to say, be the change you want to see. You and I recollect how when we wanted to introduce this into a new curriculum, the resistance we had from various other faculty members. It's difficult, but as Professor Ranil said, I mean, promotion criteria is needed, right? But at the end of the day, what matters is providing that inspiration, making sure that you make a contribution. The legacy that you leave behind is that inspiration that you do. So once again, the socio-economically impactful research is what Dr. Pascual was pointing at.
So I think, so you asked the survival or an inspirational. Yeah, I think survival also, the research what we do is for survival is important because with the crisis situation, at the same time, like you said, younger generation need to be inspired, so the research need to go into the public, the domain as well for them to get inspired. So I think that's why most of our, like for example, Professor Gopur and I was involved in this research project that we brought from Imperial College, how we kind of disseminate that, the research what we did for the public to know what we are doing. And they get inspired and they'll also join that force, because now when it comes to local universities, so the funding was given to recruit, I'll give a small example. Funding was given to recruit PhD students and postdoctoral research associates. So we managed to get research students to do PhDs after struggling, but when we advertised for the postdoctoral research associates, we didn't get any of them. So all the PhDs, they are migrating, or they are getting into lecture positions, but they were not coming to do research as a research associates. So I think there's a gap there. If we kind of inspire scientists to come and do, it's not only about teaching, there's a research that can inspire people and add contribution. I think that's where there's a lacking point that we need to work on. Get that whatever the research we do to the public and get them to inspire and come back and work for us.
So I want to ask a question back from you. Why there are no research universities in Sri Lanka? Just research, not like not teaching universities. I think if we solve that problem, I think.
When you say like what inspires, whether our research actually inspires the public, okay, for public to value what we are doing, I think that is extremely important. So the socio-economic impact that we are talking about is simply value addition, right? I mean, they need to see an outcome. I mean, when you say inspiring is a research outcome. To be inspiring, obviously they should see some value in that research, and that value actually brings the country some benefits, maybe the entire globe some benefits. Okay? So as long as actually that outcome actually can be seen. I mean, that benefit might not immediately come, but at least that benefit can be projected, I think that's the inspiring part actually that is required. I mean, for research, university not to be done, I mean, probably, I don't know, just thinking loud, maybe because actually we do not actually, in our system, actually we do not actually spend money without outcome as such. They say, okay, this is just wasted. Okay? Because of that, actually, we don't allocate for risk-taking, the risk-taking part. I mean, for long term, what you just mentioned about the US, okay? I mean, they might be preparing 50 years ahead, and that thinking actually is not there at all.
I asked this question because about 8 years ago, Professor Ajit wrote in somebody from South Korea, and we had like a 5-day workshop, I think more than that, I don't know. I was there for a few days. He was talking about how South Korea started changing with postgraduate universities, just postgraduates, degrees only. So those are research universities, not, I mean, there might be a little bit of teaching. So this is, I think, I mean, that was about 8 years ago. So we had the discussion, I think it's somewhere summarized and in a file.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think yeah, I think go ahead. Sorry.
The discussion was excellent. Like we learned a lot from this, even though we are school students. So we are from Nalanda College Research Society. This was all about universities. So as the younger generation, we would like any opinions of how to like make the younger students, like the school students, interested in science research, because like in our society we don't have a lot of members. Only a few selected members has an interest in science, and science research is not only science. You have to research it, and like you have to have a great knowledge in science to do a research. So I would like to have any from you any opinions on how to make the students interested.
I'll just give one point, okay? I'm coming from your brother's school, right? So it was very liberally that, of course, Professor Ajit might also know, right? Okay, that one of the beautiful things that we had in school is, okay, science society is not limited to science students, right? Even the Kala Sangam is not limited to art students. It had all sorts of people. Why do you limit it to kind of the selected people? I mean, if you need real inspiration and imagination, I believe it comes from the other students as well, right? Don't limit it. One of the tips that you can take is, okay, open it up, right? Science society for everyone. Just like the language society, just like the Kala Sangame, that is art society and everything. Open it up. You'll get a lot of people, those who are very good at doing research, not necessarily in science subjects, but maybe art subject, but scientific research, right? So that is one of the tips that you can take. Try it and see, right? If possible. I don't know how possible is it within your school, but try it and see, right? And also, at the same time, that inspiration, that I'm sure that this is the age, I believe, rather than us, it is your age is the good time for imagination, right? When you come to the university, by that time you pass your A-levels and things like that, you're shattered with all kind of theories and concepts and mathematics and everything. You are very much, screwed up, right? Controlled, right? Then your imagination is gone, right? But at this stage, right, you have enough freedom to think and imagine, daydream and all that. This is the time that you really think of things, the innovations, so that you can think your research in those lines. I'm sure you can do that.
Well, so I think in many ways, research is catalyzed by curiosity. And I think for students, most of it would start by just get out there and explore. You just take a walk and you look at various things and you notice certain things are happening in certain ways, and you probably start, and don't rush yourself, just ask why. And there will always be a time that you take a walk and you start seeing things, and it's within our set. It's basically built into our DNA that we ask questions. That is part of being human. And you take these questions and you go to this blacksmith place and you talk to him. And then you go to this person who does, clay work, the mechanic. You go and talk with them, get their perspective. And then sometimes you get inspired. Sometimes you get inspired. That's okay. We don't need to rush anything. I mean, we are human. And being human simply means this inquisitive nature that's built within us. It will come out. Just we need to give a little bit of time and opportunity. It will grow. It's part of being human.
Because we are kind of wrapped up.
Okay, so it's actually not a question, but just to add into what the question came in from. So I'm from the Department of Integrated Design. So what we do is we integrate into other people's businesses and we design. So in that sense, I think one of the issues we have is this whole importance of integrating into other sciences and everything else. But just to answer what, just to add into what just happened, so the 13 years of schooling, we usually at the Department of Integrated Design and as well as Architecture, we erase that thinking for 1.5 years simply to get that thinking back. So that is a tough call for us because of this whole way of thinking that the school system has actually made them to get into. So just keep doing what you're doing, but remember, if you're coming into that part of the society or university, we might be erasing all that as well.
I think that's all the time, unfortunately, we have for today. So it was indeed a very interesting discussion, and it was really nice to see some school children here as well. So it was, I would say, can maximize the impact if more of that happens of research, of course. So encourage as much as we can to join this sort of event. Okay. That's okay. So, final words I would say. So, thank you very much for joining with us today. So, I thank all the panelists for taking time off their busy schedules and joining with us. We went way over time, so unfortunately, but still we had a very good discussion, so that was good. So, hopefully you will take something away with you. With that note, I would like to thank everybody and hand it over to our compeer Lakshita.
I'm very grateful to our panelists and the moderator for that wonderful discussion, which was having different perspectives, and as a university we are blessed to have different disciplines and having different perspectives on research. So it's our duty and to appreciate our panelists and the moderator. So for that, to present the token of appreciations, I would like to invite on the stage Dean, Faculty of Graduate Studies, Professor Ajit D. Alvis, and also Director, Office of Research, Professor Rohan Gopura, on the stage to present the token of appreciation. So first I would like to invite Professor Anil Fernando to accept our token of appreciation. Then Professor Jagat Munasinghe, please accept our token of appreciation. Next, I invite Ms. Vishaka Nanayakara. Then I would like to invite Dr. Angelo Karunaratne. Dr. Ruchira Vijayasena. Dr. Mudita Senarat Yapa. Finally, I invite our moderator of the panel discussion, Dr. Venura Velagidara. Thank you, sir. So with that, we are going to conclude our discussion on panel discussion of Research Week 2022. So which will be a fruitful discussion, and again I would like to thank our panelists who are specialists in different disciplines who are contributing towards the research areas, and I hope that will be a great impact to the society and will be a pivotal point for the future researchers as well. So with the conclusion, and I also would like to invite you to join with us with Research Week 2022, which will be continued till 9th December, and there will be lots of actions coming on. So I would like to invite you to witness all those. And with that, I have a reminder as well. Please, you can enjoy a refreshment which will be served outside. And with that, we will be concluding. Thank you very much all, and hope to see you in next day as well. Thank you very much.